One of the things I like to do is take a vigorous walk each day at noon. Working in the Corps, I can hike along the Thames Valley Trail, and Tom Friesen is here from Hike Ontario and Thames Valley Trail Association. Tom, how are you?
I'm very well, Ron, thank you.
It's good to have you on Over 55, and I guess I'd like to get more to know about hiking in London and around the area. I work down at the Thames, and I go for a walk a lot of times at lunch hour through the trail. So maybe you can tell us a bit about the local trails in London and where it takes you from, to, and where.
I'd be delighted to. We're very, very lucky to be in London with all the trails that we have. Over 35 years ago, a very far-sighted group of people decided that the Thames Valley Trail along the Thames River would be a wonderful opportunity to walk up and down. So that trail was created by volunteers. Since that time, the city has assumed a lot of the responsibility and has paved it to make it a multi-use trail, so it's basically a safer surface for people who are perhaps a little older and a little afraid of tripping over rocks and roots. Many of us who are over 55, though, do love to get off the paved trail and get onto the soft trails. But the Thames Valley Trail actually goes right from Delaware up to St. Mary's along the Thames. And you can actually, if you want to, start at Port Stanley, walk from Port Stanley through London, north to St. Mary's, on past Stratford, Waterloo, and you find yourself at Tobermory, or down at Dunville, or at Port Hope. There's thousands of hiking trails across this province, which are maintained by volunteers, and therefore they're open to people at no cost at all.
Wow.
We're very, very lucky. Also in London, another feature that really works for people here is the environmentally significant areas. Short form is ESA. And those are areas of the city that the city has set aside as nature reserves. They're maintained by the Upper Thames Regional Conservation Authority. They do a wonderful job of marking trails and keeping the areas safe and manicured for us, kind of thing. So it's a wonderful opportunity to get going in and walk. I could talk about some of those specific places if you'd like me to.
Sure, because I know when I talk about the Corps and living in London and working in London that I have seen over the years. I've been in London about 22 years, and they just seem to expand more and more, and it's nice white asphalt for the people that maybe are a bit challenged and you know, are prone to maybe stumble here now and then, like myself. And yeah, I'd love you to talk about it, because I don't think people in London know enough about what we have to offer them, and it'd be nice to know.
Well, you can walk on both sides of the river for much of the, and when I say the river, I'm talking about the Thames River. So we've got the North Branch heading up past the university, and we've got the South Branch that heads down to the Southeast Hamilton Road area, and you can walk along the river as a commuter lane. You see a lot of people in the mornings going to work, cycling, walking, running. You can often go on both sides of the river and loop around, so you're actually not seeing the same area twice. You can walk on paved trails, or you can get off and walk on soft paths. Personally, I prefer the soft paths. It's a little bit more gentle on my old feet, but the opportunity exists throughout the whole city to get from one place to the next, basically on hiking trails and away from traffic.
Oh, that's good. We never think of it, but I guess in some ways, hiking is a sport. You know, you got to be a bit fit, and you got to get up and get out there, and it's an affordable sport, if I want to call it a sport, because you need a pair of good shoes, and I guess hiking poles probably work. But it's something that we can afford. It's healthy for us. It's invigorating, and I think London's done a good job. Do you know if London's has plans to build more trails within the Corps, or even going outside the Corps?
I certainly am aware of the trail program. One of the things I would recommend that people do is they go and pick up the walking trails and Bike London map.
Wow.
And that's available at the tourism office right at the corner of Wellington and Dundas.
Right.
And some other locations around the city. You can also pick up pamphlets there of the environment significant areas, and those will lead you around. They're hidden gems. They're
Right.
not necessarily in the core, but they are close enough that you can walk to them. If hiking is a sport, it's a very gentle sport, and it's a sport where you can set your own pace. And if you listen to your own body and do things like have appropriate footwear, typically bought in the afternoon because your feet swell, and if you buy it in the morning, you'll find that they don't quite fit you as well. You mentioned hiking poles. Hiking poles are a great addition to hiking because they take 30 to 40% of the weight off your knees and hips, and that will keep you going longer. But you can go for, our Trail Association offers typically almost 300 hikes a year, or pretty much 300 guided hikes a year. And some of them are 1-hour hikes, some of them are 2-hour hikes, some of them are 3 and 4 and 5-hour hikes. So you can basically match the level of fitness to your age and to your ability.
So and then you like you say, you can tailor it to what your strengths and weaknesses are. You said you like to get off the main path a lot because I guess it's a little more adventurous for you. See more?
The Thames Valley area is a wonderful, environmentally significant area of the Carolinian Forest. And the Carolinian Forest has basically, if you draw a line between Sarnia and Toronto and go south, that area is wonderfully diverse, and there are things here that are found nowhere else in Canada. The richness and diversity are terrific. And now with things like the bald eagles coming back, you often see bald eagles walking on the Thames. I see osprey when I walk north of the city on a hiking trail that I maintain for the Thames Valley Trail. It's just wonderful to be able to get out there. On the multi-purpose path, you certainly have a very safe surface. You have to remember that you got to stay on one side because you're often going to be passed by people on bicycles and rollerblades, and we share the surface, and we are happy to have that opportunity. But to be honest with you, I'm more afraid where I'm going to interdict with other users.
Right. Yeah, and I think what I heard you say earlier, which really excited me, is it's kept up by volunteers. I have a high respect for volunteers, so to hear that it's being done by volunteers is very close and dear to my heart.
There are literally thousands of volunteers across this province who maintain 65,000 kilometers of trail that we have in the province. Some of it's municipal, some of it is provincial, etc. But there's trails, you can walk across this province on volunteer managed trails, and people inspect those trails, they correct any problems on the trails that they find. Some of us mow grass for kilometers to keep the meadow grass low enough so people can see where the trail is, and we have a good time with that effort. But that's typically done by people who are actually over 55 in general.
Great. Well, thank you, Tom. I much appreciate you coming to speak to us about the trails, and for people to get out there and walk. It's an enjoyable, I'm going to say sport, but it's enjoyable leisure time. Thank you very much.
I hope to see your listeners out in the trails. That's always fun to see people of all ages, but seniors are wonderfully able to go through London with the trail system we have.
Well, thank you again. Coming up is our weekly bio feature. See who we're profiling right after this.